Welcome to the AXPONA Audio Insider Podcast. My name is Lenny Florentine. I'm here with Steve from Fidelity Imports. Don't
Thanks
worry,
for having me.
I also can't pronounce the name of my company. It's okay. So you've been in this HiFi industry for a while.
Yeah, pretty much my whole life. Lenny, I started as a car stereo installer before I had a car. I was messing with audio and building boxes for friends to be able to save up enough money to buy my first car. And then I was an installer for about maybe 4 or 5 years. My thinking was that one day I'd be a mechanic. And at the time, it was easier to, it's kind of scary thinking about it, but it was easier to be an installer, excuse me, than to be a mechanic. So that was my path originally. And it happened that one of the stores I was working at, they needed some extra help on the sales floor one day. And so the manager said, Steve, can you come up to the front and help out? And I said, sure, whatever, you know. I went onto the floor and I started making sales. And the manager was like, you're never going back in that bay again. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, dude, I want to be a mechanic, you know? And so he said, no, man. He's like, you need to come onto the floor. Like, you're great at this. And I was like, you know, this isn't what I want to do. I'm a grease monkey, you know?
Yeah.
So he said, look, let's try something. I'm going to ask you to work 3 days a week in the bay and 3 days a week on the sales floor. We're short-staffed anyway. And let's see. Let's give it a month. So at the end of the month, he was like, man, you're not going back there. And I started to love it.
And this was all like a car stereo?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it was it's not around anymore. It was Bryn Mawr Stereo.
Oh, Bryn Mawr Tweeter.
Yeah, which
that's
became
actually
Tweeter.
my head was going to Tweeter.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
that's where I had my first car stereo done back in the late 90s.
I could have installed it.
Early 2000s.
So yeah, it was an interesting time. You know, car stereo was really popular. I would go to Spring Break Nationals. I would build my system, drive down to Daytona, compete in Spring Break Nationals and Iasca.
Okay.
It was everything. It was my whole life at that time. You know, I'm a college dropout. And so.
Hey, you made it farther than I did.
What's that?
You made it farther than I did.
Yeah? Oh, well, I wasn't in college very long, but.
Okay. It's still longer than me.
But yeah, I tried. I went to St. Joe's in Philly, and it wasn't for me. And so I sort of dedicated all my time into audio and like speaker placement and understanding how how the power and the speakers differ. And then even at a young age, I was like fascinated by tube audio. So in my car, I actually ran a tube amplifier.
You can do that?
Yeah. There's a couple of them that are out there. There was one called the Milbert BAM. There was another one which was an offshoot from Precision Power, or maybe they were bought by them, which was Phase Audio.
Okay.
And they had a tube amplifier. And it was tubes, I think, in the line stage and solid state output, but it gave just a little sweetness, you know? And I was fascinated by the difference between the amps. And so I did car audio for quite some time. I was blessed. I started at Panasonic, and I was the youngest salesperson they ever had. I remember that I couldn't rent a car. My boss had to rent cars, because back then they were strict about 25. So,
I mean, I still think they're kind of strict about it. Was it maybe 23, 25, something like that?
Yeah, it was crazy. I think they didn't even realize it when they hired me. Like, if we get to the airport, you know, somebody else has got to drive. There's no Uber, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we barely had cell phones back then.
Yeah.
But now I sound like an old person, right?
No, I mean, I remember those days. There's, you know, my kids are 17 and 18. And I think about like when I was 16, I took a bus trip to Houston for a wrestling show. Mm-hmm. And I was 16, I was with a kid that was 17, I was with a kid that was 18. And thinking about that now, there were no phones. You didn't have a cell phone.
Right.
I would never let my kids
No, me neither. I have 3 kids too. There's no possible way they would go anywhere without a cell phone.
Oh my gosh, what was happening? Like, that just makes it so much crazier.
Well, so, you know, my journey, like, from there, I went from Panasonic to JVC, and I was able to climb the ladder a bit. But I realized, you know, I was 27 years old. I was chubby. I was already losing my hair, and I'm talking about car stereo every day, and I just wasn't cool. You know, it's like the old guy that's kind of hold on to being cool. So I figured I need to do something different. Like, I can't talk about car audio and relate to young kids as chubby, bald old dude, you know what I mean? So So I decided like I'm going to go into car audio, and distinctly, like for me at the time, again, having no education and no other prospects, I had to take quite a few steps backwards to get into home audio. Back then it was a big deal. Like car guys were car guys, home guys were home guys, right? And so
it was separated, like in Tweeter and Bryn Mawr, like, and to show what was popular at the time, the car stereo section was first, at least in my Tweeter.
Yeah.
And then in the back,
the first thing you saw on the right.
Yeah, and it was almost like a dark change, and then it would be the home stereo. I can't even remember if I ever even went back into the home stereo stuff.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, and because car was everything.
Car was everything right then.
Yeah. So I wound up taking a couple of steps backwards, but into home audio. And I feel blessed to have been able to do a lot of different positions. I did some sales management, marketing, and I was able to go into production and learn how to build products, how to design products, how to select factories. And I think I really sort of learned a lot about how the industry works, because when you're in sales or sales and marketing, you learn one side of it, and it's about putting it on the shelf and then selling it through. But what it takes to get it to the shelf, and planning so far backwards, because you can't really look at your competition all the time. Because if you're looking at your competition, you're chasing ghosts, right? Yeah. You're chasing the last version of what they were. So you kind of have to look at the market and understand it's going to take me a year or 14 months or whatever to get this product out. Where is my spot 14 months later, right? And so for me, I really learned a lot about the industry. And at the same time, I had this weird thing happen where I would work for these companies, but I didn't really want to own the gear from the companies. So I was at the more kind of mainstream companies, and I would lust after all the boutique-y things, the things that you find in some of the local stereo shops or the higher end stereo shops. And so, but I couldn't afford any of them. But I would be like, kind of going around to different retailers and stuff.
Were you that guy that was sitting in the sales room and just would come in every week and not buy anything?
No, I wasn't that bad.
You weren't that guy?
I wasn't that bad. No, but like I tried to learn everything I could about all these products. Like I remember, buying every stereophile magazine. Barnes & Noble had HiFi Plus. Okay. Which was like $12. I mean, that was a lot of money back then for a magazine, right?
I mean, I see the prices of magazines now, and they're, they're probably $12 for a normal magazine. It's just unbelievable. But $12 back then,
it was a lot.
I mean, all the other ones were like $3.95.
Yeah, exactly, $3.95. Yeah. And HiFi Plus always stood out to me. And you'd go to Barnes & Noble, and they would only have, unlike some of the other magazines, they would only have one product on the cover. And I still have all these. I saved all of them. And so the product was like a piece of art, right? They always had an uncluttered cover and just a piece of gear there. And I would scour through them, and I'd learn about French products and Swedish products and Danish products and all these different places that were producing products, and then like the mystique around Japanese products and all these different things. And so when I finally had the chance to say, what do you want to do with your life kind of thing, I knew the answer wasn't to go further and further up the ladder, right, in the corporate world, because, and I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I felt the higher I climbed up the ladder, the more I was surrounded by bankers, the more the conversations were about the units and the distribution, and the less and less it was about music, which was my primary goal in the first place, and what the product did and how it sounded.
Yeah, some people may just be like, hey, it's a box. You're moving the box.
Yeah.
Just get the box. And that's where it loses that feel. Like if you're into the hobby and if you enjoy everything, when you get to that level and they're just talking boxes and numbers and stuff, it's not as fun.
Well, and think about it, right? If it's just about the boxes and numbers, then why not toasters, right? Yeah. No offense to toaster salespeople.
But I've heard that, though. I've heard people go like, doesn't matter, if you're selling this or if you're selling a microwave or a fridge or whatever, it's all just the same stuff. And I think that's one of the things that's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there's something that's your thing, if audio is your thing, it's what you're passionate about, it's what you love to do. If you're the person who, your partner, your wife, your spouse, your kids, whatever, it's Sunday, and you say to them, hey, I'm going to go down and listen to some music for a little bit, or I'll be back. I'm just going to go listen to something. And you hear them say, Lenny, what are you doing? It's been 4 hours. I thought you were going to listen to something, right? That's what I'm about, right? Yeah. I want people to purchase things, put them in their home, and lose hours, right? If you lose hours in the music, then my job's done, right?
Yeah.
If you're sitting there and you're saying, well, I can hear the sound stage, and it's really deep, and it's really wide, and this is really fast, and but if I just had a better DAC, then I would reach nirvana.
Yeah.
I can't stand that, right?
Yeah.
Like I get the idea of wanting to constantly change products and hear things, and I think the discovery and the journey is awesome. But if you ultimately aren't losing hours in the hobby, then something's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to get to that point where you learn what you like and just start to kind of add little seasoning into the recipe, right? For the last little bit, So, yeah, I'm a nerd. I mean, like at the end of the day, like I feel pretty strongly that there's so many things you can do with your time, but if this is your thing and this is your hobby and your passion, your release, like I can justify anything at this point, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean, that's what it is. It's the time, it's enjoying it, and you're right. I like the idea of the seasoning instead of like chasing the dragon and just trying to always get the next best thing. And stuff. Yeah. There's different reasons to do stuff, and some people like to be one and done and just enjoy it forever. And that's where you're on higher quality, hi-fi products, and then some people just like the next little thing and little thing and little thing. And then there's different tastes, I guess. Some people, and it's totally fine however they do it. But I like the idea that like, if you just go down there and listen to it for 5 minutes and then you leave and you're just kind of like, oh, I wish I had something else.
Right.
That's kind of different, but you should be able to enjoy it.
Well, and the other thing that I think, like, you're totally spot on. I think that the thing that some people get mixed up too is I hate the better. Right? There's so much about better or best. This is the best. This is the best. And I think that people, if I can, kind of speak to all the time I've spent in audio and the things I've experienced, we have horn speakers, we have direct radiating speakers, we have panels, we have subwoofers, no subwoofers, we have analog, we have digital. We have all these different paths. Is it that one of them is right and the other people are all wrong? It's impossible.
Yeah.
Right? So how can there be best? Right? Yeah. If you say that I'm a panel speaker guy and somebody else says they're a horn guy, right? And then somebody else says that they like acoustic suspension, right? Or I like tubes, or I like subs. No, subs shouldn't be in the system, right? You hear these crazy things.
Yeah.
And I just, that's the part where I wish we weren't so closed off with, oh no, that's not the right way. That's not the right way, right? Because it's impossible that all those other people are wrong, right?
Right. It's all personal taste. Everybody is different. We all have different cars. We all dress different. We all have different hobbies.
Yeah.
And
if I could grow a beard like yours, I'd freaking have one.
A beard, you'd have one.
I get little spotty things.
Who has the best beard? I don't know. Maybe people think you have a better beard. I don't know. Maybe.
Man, mine comes in patchy, man. I can't do it.
But a lot, and some of it could be about like synergy. Synergy's a big thing for us.
Totally.
Like, everybody might be like, I think this is the best speaker. And then, if you put that with an amp that doesn't sound right or doesn't match it, So, and synergy is the fun thing I think to play with because, hearing all the gear that I do and all the different brands and all different levels and everything, like I could like kind of look at something or see the concept of a product and be like, I know how that's going to sound in a system. And like, if you like this kind of music or if you like this kind of tone or if this is what like the feeling you're looking for, the experience you're going for, it's probably going to pair well with this. But I think that's where I go because best is everything's subjective.
Yes. Yeah, and you'll never get off the train.
Yeah. So you have how many brands do you have now?
Right now we have 16 brands.
Okay.
Yep. We started the company 6 years ago. And for the first year we worked on our infrastructure. So we didn't have a brand. My partner and I were working on how do we set up a business that can interact with retailers, and the primary goal was for specialty retailers, and how do we make it easy for them, right? How do we make it so that it works on their time? And so ultimately we use Shopify to integrate a wholesale platform, and that's what we built. And at the time when we did that, it was it's still pretty rare today actually, but it was pretty rare. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of still, let me email you your purchase order, right?
And know like that. As somebody that is a dealer and stuff, when I have to email purchase orders, it's a pain. When I go to a website that's not, I mean, I'm used to Shopify, but the difference in how the infrastructure is night and day. You go to a clunky website, it's a pain.
Yeah.
You go to Shopify, hit buy.
Yeah.
Like it's just like you were going to shop on like Amazon or something.
Yep.
And being ahead of the curve, as you were talking about earlier, and seeing where you're going to be at in the future, you made the right choice.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that in the beginning, and again, that was part of the whole year before we had a brand, we just kept refining it. We kept getting it better and better, linking it to the warehouse, understanding how the response would be. So when you bought something, what communication went back to the dealer, and then giving the dealer a repository to be able to go and see over time all of the orders they've had. They can look at any types of trends, colors that they were selling, price points that they were selling. So what was actually working. So it wasn't just us having the data, but it's two-way communication. So the dealer can also have all that info. And then I think we very quickly realized that training was going to be important. So we have a world-class trainer, Eric Smith. He was with the Pioneer organization for 25 years.
Wow.
He's a fantastic trainer. So that was our first hire, was a trainer. So it says a lot about what we think about, making sure that.
And he's got energy.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. He's he's a tiny little Energizer bunny.
He is a tiny little Energizer bunny.
He is. And then from there, we really thought that it was important to invest in video. So we started with one full-time videographer. Now we have two. And we have one that specializes in short-form video and one that specializes in long-form video. And so our conversations are quite different than other people's conversations. So when you speak to other distributors, importers, sometimes it's about, oh, I know that dealer. Oh, I've been calling on them. I have a great relationship. It's a different discussion when you're thinking about where to place your brand, when you think about somebody who's got a killer streamlined process for dealers. They have two full-time videographers, right, who are working on creating content so that consumers can consume it. They can see the product in 3 dimensions, and they can understand the differences from product to product. We can record the people who make the products. In fact, over the last 2 years, we brought a bunch of journalists and some YouTubers and content creators with us through Europe, taking them to the families that produce the products that we carry.
And a lot of them are produced by families.
Absolutely,
And
that's our specialty.
I'm pretty much, everyone that I know, most of your brands, I would think, is all like that. Like that's what it feels like. And when we're at like shows like AXPONA, I get, I see the families that come from all these companies. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, we sort of require them to come over here, twist their arm a little bit. But it's one thing to hear us talk about their product, but no one's going to have the same level of understanding, engagement, and passion for the products than the family that's building it. So why not bring them here and let the consumers that are interested or possibly purchasing the products meet them, right?
And you're ahead of the game. I wanted to jump in on the content side because you're one of the few people that probably realizes that a person that does short form content is not the same person that does long form content. Yeah. It's a different mindset and stuff like that. So.
I think that you'll find that's the difference in the conversation, right? Is that we're thinking about things, I believe, quite a bit ahead of others that are doing the same function that we are. And back to that, sort of chasing ghosts, that's this version of us. The next version of us will be something even more, right? And so we already just took the next step towards that, where we have a 15,000 square foot building outside of Pennsylvania, and that's really going to become something incredible, right? So we're planning on putting a YouTube studio, a photography lab, a demo room, and a training room inside of there. So now we can have dealers come in, we can have vendors come in, we can have a vendor come in, have all the product, because it's attached to our warehouse, pull out everything, and then show you every single model as it lines up, right? Because sometimes you might say, okay, well, a speaker company makes, a bookshelf, a monitor, and 2 floor standers. And so you may think, oh, just buy the big one. But no.
And you just have to guess on everything else in between. Yeah.
But if I can lay them all out for you and show you all of them in relative space compared to each one, right? And say, okay, this is the size of the product. This is how many drivers you get. This is what you want to think about. But also, this is the size of the room that you're thinking about. Because don't always just go for the biggest one. The tallest floor standing speaker might not be the right one for your room or for your power, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm excited for the future in that and where you guys are going. I love the family aspect of all your brands and excited for this, this building. It's just innovative. Again, staying ahead of the curve.
Trying to, yeah.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of great stuff going on. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
It was fun. Cheers. We had a good, it's a good time at the show. And guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. This was fun.
Yeah.
Usually I'm doing these things virtually, and it's so much more fun just to sit down and have.
No, it's cool. It's cool to kick back and chill.
I thought of something crazy like doing the hot, how they do the wing thing.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, what can we do to make it get crazy? I'm like, maybe we need to, I'm crazy enough sometimes. So maybe we don't need to go down one of those routes. But
nobody wants to see me do hot ones because the top of my head will start shining from the heat.
Oh yeah. So no, that's great. I had a good time. It was good. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Guys, for the AXPONA Audio Insider Podcast, we'll see you guys next time.